With more on the provincial vote, we're now joined by Tim Powers, Chairman of Summa Strategies, host as well of the Tim Powers Show in Newfoundland and Labrador. Great title. How long did it take you to come up with that one?
Hours, days.
Days. The consultants were on it. And with him, Eric Grenier, polls analyst, founder and the writer of the Writ. Hello to both of you.
Hello. Good to be here, despite the abuse.
Well, I missed it. I'm glad you're back. That said, Eric, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, shut up, buddy. Go ahead, Eric.
Because, unlike many other elections, there hasn't been a lot of polling around this vote. Why is that?
Well, Newfoundland and Labrador is not a big place. There aren't any pollsters that are based in it that put out numbers publicly. It is an expensive place to poll. It's hard to do polls online there. You can do an online poll in Ontario and Quebec pretty easily. In Newfoundland and Labrador, a lot more difficult. And no one wants to pay for a poll. And so this is the reason why we haven't seen any numbers. Before this campaign, we hadn't seen any numbers since November 2024. So we were going into the campaign a little bit of a black box. We have a little bit of a better idea of how it might shape out, but even that, it's still pretty foggy.
Okay. I'm going to get you to share what you do know. That's fine. I will note the fact that Tim was laughing when he said no one's willing to pay for a poll.
We're Newfoundlanders. We like to keep our money close.
I appreciate that. But let's take a look at a board that we do have here. And this is the legislature at dissolution and the seat count at dissolution. Walk us through what the numbers that we're looking at here and what you're extrapolating from the numbers that are available to you.
There might actually be not that much change based on what we've seen just this recently. Now, there was a poll that had been done in the middle of the summer, and it was done at the height of the wildfires when John Hogan was pretty much on TV every single day and handling that crisis. And the Liberal numbers in that poll by Narrative Research were very good. They were up by about 29 points. There has been a poll that's been conducted this past week, just before the debates that took place on Wednesday. It was done by MQO Research for Global Public Affairs. And Global Public Affairs had shared their numbers with their clients, but I've also gotten a look at those numbers. And it did suggest that it is actually a pretty tight race between the Liberals and the PCs. Couple points between them, really 3 points based on the poll that I saw. If you extrapolate that into the seat math, you could end up with a very similar House of Assembly than what we saw at dissolution, which means that could be a razor-thin minority, majority, really for either party. You'd still probably give the Liberals the better chance, but I think it could be a lot closer than some people might have been expecting.
Which is interesting, because if you compare it to the narrative numbers you were talking about that earlier, released in August, it showed a 20-point spread, but much closer this time around. Oh, okay, so Tim, you, as I say, you have this radio show, VOCM, if you want to listen to it. I'm wondering, from what you're hearing from Eric, if that matches up what you are hearing through the program and through the people and contacts you have in Newfoundland.
There's certainly an enthusiasm deficit, or people are sick of elections because we had the federal election, and Newfoundland and Labrador just went through its provincial cycle of municipal elections. They had really low turnout in the St. John's municipal election, and I think people are struggling to find an interest here, which is unfortunate. It also makes it more difficult, even with the numbers Eric's talked about, for the opposition leader who is trying to campaign on change. There was a debate earlier this week, Michael, and it was perhaps the most lackluster debate I have seen come out of Newfoundland and Labrador in a long time. We have gone from a politic of fiery orators and in-your-face, raucous behavior to quieter, more sedate type of oratory. And while that on the whole is probably not bad, it's not helpful, I think, if you're trying to make a change argument. In terms of look, I've talked to all three leaders, I've had them on. Why this is probably tighter, if the MQO numbers are right, I don't dispute them, is because the cost of living. Like national polling we're seeing now, everybody is focused on cost of living, and there's also some anxiety in Newfoundland and Labrador around crime and health care. So if you're the incumbent government and you've been there for 10 years, people are wondering, well, can it get any better under you? And that's certainly what Mr. Wakeham, the opposition leader, is trying to argue. So the other thing hanging about is the Memorandum of Understanding between Newfoundland and Labrador and Quebec about the future of Churchill Falls, announced with much fanfare by former Premier Furey, adopted and run with by Premier Hogan. It's hard to tell beyond an elite cadre of people who are actually having a pretty active discussion about it, whether that's connecting with people in ways any of the parties would like.
Which is interesting because being the national media, the only real issue that's come to the forefront or has been written about has been the MOU around Churchill. And, we're talking about billions of dollars across $250 billion
thereabouts
across 50 years for Newfoundland and Labrador. And I remember when that was announced, great fanfare, as you say, and celebration that, there's going to be finally some redress about the economic imbalance with Quebec over that deal. So that enthusiasm has now died?
Well, we've seen a group, we have 2 groups of 9, Michael, so 18. In the group of 9 opposing the MOU because they're upset with a number of terms of the contract is former Premier Danny Williams. Now, Premier Williams is still a very polarizing figure in the province, and people are critical of what he did with Muskrat Falls, and then there's another group of business people who are supporting it. They've been in this back and forth, but it's almost become an elite conversation. So most people are still trying to navigate, all right, should I be for it? Should I be against it? Why are people against it who used to lead the province? It's very confusing despite the apparent jobs that will come and the injection of new revenue, which a lot of the Liberal promises are based on.
Okay, so here we have a few days before the people in the province go to the polls. What are you watching out for, Eric, given this tighter number that you're now hearing?
Well, I'm really curious to see if the results we see in the provincial election will match a little bit what we saw in the federal election. The Liberals did very well in the Avalon Peninsula. Their numbers went way up in St. John's. The Conservatives did really well in the rest of the island of Newfoundland, so central, western, eastern Newfoundland. If we see the same kind of gains for the PCs, and the numbers that we've seen from that polling that was done does suggest that that's possible, it really will come down to whether the Liberals can make gains in and around St. John's enough to hold on to power, or if the PCs are going to make enough gains in the rest of the province to topple the Liberals. So it really is to see if that historic pattern gets flipped, because for decades and decades, St. John's was really strong for the PCs. Now it's looking pretty strong for the Liberals.
Okay, so interesting to keep an eye on those races. Tim, what do you?
Yeah, there's also a very traditional thing in the Newfoundland campaign, the rural-urban divide. Tony Wakeham has been appealing to rural Newfoundlanders who are in those 3 federal Conservative districts to deliver that. You win in Newfoundland and Labrador, at least majorities, if you win outside of St. John. So I would be watching for that on election night on Tuesday, but Mr. Wakeham has had trouble getting people to buy into change. The Liberals have been in power for 10 years. Newfoundland and Labrador, as Eric knows, we have long cycles still, 10, 12, 13 years. I don't know if there's enough juice in the tank or in the engine to get the PCs across the line, but maybe there is.
Okay, well, we are watching. Eric, thank you for being here. Tim, nice to have you back. And for those that miss you,
Michael.
well, you left us to start a radio show, which you can listen to on VOCM. See how nice I am.
You're a very kind man.
Guys, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thanks.